Can you see it? A boy, maybe 10 or 11, he walks out to his father's car and he looks in the back seat and he can see his father's stuff, clothes, suitcase, just thrown in, not packed, just thrown in the back seat, the way a man packs when he's leaving and maybe not coming back. You see the father walk out of the house, and the boy, he asks his dad a question. Dad, are you coming back? And his dad doesn't answer. He just reaches into his coat, pulls out a set of documents. They look like legal documents tied together with a flat red ribbon tied into a bow on the top. And he hands them to the boy and he gets in the car and drives away. The boy stands in the driveway holding those documents. And after his father has disappeared into the distance, the boy opens the documents. It's the deed to the house and everything the father owned left behind. The father gave him everything he had except a father. And suddenly you can see the years pass. And the boy is now a young man. And he brings home a wife. And they enter the same house. And they're happy. There's hope in that house, a new beginning. And then the years pass again. And the wife is sitting alone in the house. And she's crying. And outside, a boy, 10 or 11 years old, standing in the driveway, looking in his father's car. The young man who once stood in this same driveway as a boy comes out of the house. He walks to the car and gets in. The boy runs to the side of the car. Dad, when are you coming back? And the father points at the mailbox, a black box with the red flag up. You see the red flag up? Get what's in there. And he turns and drives away. Now, as his father disappears into the distance, the boy walks to the mailbox and he opens it. And inside, there's a set of documents, legal looking, tied together with a flat red ribbon, bow on top. The exact same documents, the exact same red ribbon, the exact same gesture. And I woke up overwhelmingly sad for the boy, for his mother, and for the man who had become his father. And I recognized all three of them because I've been all three of them. I'm Bill. This is the Warrior Medic. So, was it prophetic? I don't know. Was it just pizza? Maybe. But here's what I do know. That dream showed me something I've been trying to say for months. And starting this week, we're going to talk about your story. That red ribbon is the image I can't shake because it shows up twice. Same documents, same ribbon. Same question from a boy who needed an answer that he didn't get. What the dream showed wasn't a monster. It showed a man who did what his father did, not because he chose it, but because it was the only fathering he ever saw. Men who carry the abandonment wound don't pass it to their sons through cruelty. They pass it through what they learned to call provision or providing. I left him a house and I paid him the bills. He had everything he needed, everything, except a father who stayed. The red ribbon is the wound, dressed up as a gift. Provision without presence. Documents instead of a father. A mailbox instead of a man who stays. And the boy at the mailbox opens it and learns the same lesson his father learned. The people who are supposed to stay go away. But at least they leave you something. That conclusion, quietly, without any ceremony, without any meaning to install it, just passed to the next generation. Exodus 20, verse 5 says, I'd visit the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. Hear this and listen closely because it's important. God didn't say that as a threat. He said it as a diagnosis. God is not cursing children. Fathers are. This is how the wound travels, not through malice, through inheritance. The wound the grandfather carried passed to the father, and the father carried them until he passed them on to his son, and the son who swore he would never be like his father handed his son the same gift, the red ribbon still attached, because he never broke the chain. He just moved the mailbox. Here's what nobody tells you about the abandonment wound. It doesn't install itself through a single dramatic moment. It installs itself through a conclusion, followed by a vow. The boy standing at the mailbox didn't just lose his father, he decided something. He couldn't have told you what he decided. He was only 10 years old and he didn't have the language. But somewhere underneath the grief, underneath the confusion, and underneath the question he never stopped asking, when are you coming back? He drew a conclusion that would run his life for the next 40 years. People leave. The ones who matter most leave. And the best you can hope for is they leave you something on the way out. That conclusion became a vow, not a spoken vow, and not with a ceremony, just a quiet decision the nervous system makes. I will never be the one left standing at the mailbox again. The boy at the mailbox becomes a man, and the vow still goes with him into his job, his friendships, his marriage, and into his fathering. And then one day, he hands his son a set of documents tied with a red ribbon, not because he's cruel, but because it's the only thing he knows how to do. You can't give what you never received. Here's where the teaching gets harder and more important. The man in the dream who drove away, the one who pointed to the mailbox, he was the boy in the first scene, the same boy who stood in the driveway and asked his father, "Are you coming back?" Who opened the documents with the red ribbon. He didn't become a different kind of man. He became the only kind of man he knew how to be. Men who wound their sons with abandonment almost never choose it. They're running a program that was installed before they had any say in it. A father who lost his own father at 12 fathered from an empty well. A father who was never told he was worth staying for couldn't tell his son that either. And a father who learned that provision was the language of love left documents instead of presents. This is not an excuse. What happened to the boy at the mailbox was real. The wound was real, and the cost was real. But here's what changes everything. When a man can see his father not just as the man who wounded him, but as the boy who was wounded first, something changes. Real understanding comes like sunrise at dawn, a light slowly illuminating. Not into approval, and not into pretending, and not into minimizing what the wound cost, but into grief. Grief for the father who fathered from empty, and grief for the grandfather whose cruelty and absence started the chain. And finally, grief for generations of boys who stood at a mailbox asking questions they never got answers to. That grief is not weakness. It's the beginning of something. Malachi 4, verse 6, the last promise in the Old Testament. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. That turning from indifference to presence, from documents to staying, and from pointing at the mailbox to sitting in the driveway is the mission of the warrior medic. It's also the work of a lifetime, and it starts with one thing: seeing the wound in your father before you look at the wound he gave you. Again, Exodus 25, verse 5. I visit the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. 3 generations, 4 at most. Is that literal? Maybe. But regardless, it is saying the wound has limits. And then verse 6 says, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me. The wound passes 3 or 4 generations. The healing passes to 1,000. Do the math. The chain the wound built, 3 generations. The chain healing provides, 1,000 generations. That's not symmetry. That's a route. The chain breaks with one man, not a perfect man, and not a man who has it all figured out, but a man who sees it, who names it, who decides today that his son deserves something different than what he received. That man doesn't have to be perfect. He just has to turn. Psalms 103, verse 13. As the Father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. God used the image of a father to describe his own heart. Not the father who drove away, and not the father who pointed at the mailbox. The father who stays, who turns towards his children. The father you never had is the father who's looking for you right now. And he's the only one who can break the chain from the inside, not by erasing what happened, but by replacing what was lost. A father who stays, a father who receives, and a father whose ribbon is not a legal document, but a cross, and arms that are open wide when nobody else's were. So here's the challenge. Again, not a list, just one thing. Think about the man who handed you the red ribbon. Your father, your grandfather, the man who was supposed to stay and didn't. Before you look at what his wound cost you, ask one question. What was handed to him? You don't have to answer the question, and you don't have to feel compassion yet. You don't even have to forgive anything today. Just ask the question, and then sit quietly with it, because the man who can ask that question is already different from the man who couldn't. And the boy at the mailbox, the one in your story, deserves a father who's different. The chain breaks here with you today. I'm Bill. This is the Warrior Medic. No man left behind.